Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, I have Jide Ologun, legal practitioner and national development advocate, Yemi Adamolekun, executive director in Office Enough, and Professor David Aworawo, professor of international relations and strategic studies, University of Lagos. Thank you very much for joining me again this week. Well, we have our three guests. We had Senator Shehu Sani, who commented on the Tinubu government's scorecard and also coalition politics and also the way forward. We had Professor Adamolekun, who talked about Donald Trump and the visit of Ramaphosa to the White House. Harvard been slammed, almost delicensed, more or less, by the White House and issues of academic freedom. And then the emerging crisis in Côte d'Ivoire, where President Alassane Ouattara is seeking a fifth term in office after he had amended the constitution in 2020 to get the second term, and now a fourth term. Now he wants a fifth term in office. And then we had Dr. Chinyere Amona, the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We talked about the recent decisions of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank and the implications for doing business and the implications also for growth, and what she thinks, along with other groups in the private sector, what the MPC should do at the next meeting in July 20 to 21, namely that they think in organized private sector that the way to stimulate growth and empower businesses is to reduce the costs of credit. Let me start with.
I'll just start with her. The only comment I would say, I liked your question to her, that why are they seemingly very reactive? And also her response to the Buy Nigeria policy. I was surprised she didn't raise the issue that there's nothing new. And you can't be saying Buy Nigeria when, as she's rightly said, that you don't support Nigerian companies to be able to function and actually produce at volumes that people can then purchase. Then kind of walking backwards from there, Professor Jinodu, I spoke to him as he was leaving, that he was quite gracious on Trump in his framing of Trump not being a typical politician, that basically said what you see is what you get, he says how he feels. That's fair enough, but there should be a line drawn when he blatantly lies. So there's a difference between saying how you feel and not being necessarily diplomatic or trying to sugarcoat an issue. But that's very different from lying. And Donald Trump's pattern is that he lies. And he does need people to call him out. So while President Ramaphosa got some credit, as you said, for being gracious and not going down a rabbit hole with Donald Trump, I think he certainly could have been a lot more forceful. And Professor Jinodu framing the whole respect for the office, yeah, respect my office. I'm a president of a sovereign nation. Yes, I'm in the White House, but it's a building. It's your office. And so I think he gave him a little too much credit for his response to it, and the fact that he wasn't also wasn't able to call him out. The fact that you're talking about white people being mistreated in South Africa. What about black people being mistreated in America? And where does that leave us in the context of race relations and historical issues? And then on the issue of Harvard, again, I thought Professor Jinodu was quite lenient. Yes, there are concerns around American liberalism going too far to the left, but you don't pull back, as he rightly said, and I do agree with him on that, the contentious issues, or is that what they call them? Yeah, there's a phrase he used. Contested, issues. Thank you, not contentious, thank you. The contested issues, I completely agree with him, but you don't pull back on contested issues without a debate, without a conversation. But Trump is a bully. So he's not interested in a debate. He's not interested in how do we go back to where we want to. He's interested in it in a fiat, as a military dictator would. And that should be pushed, should get pushed back. And Professor Jinodu, I completely agree with him that We are seeing the guardrails in the US system as people are going to court. Judges have reversed the Harvard decision, and he's been challenged, which is great. But I think the fact that it's even an issue for me is a concern. It's great that he's being challenged, but the fact that because you don't like what a university is doing, you are then looking for ways to hit the university, not have a conversation around how do we dial this back slightly. He's done it with universities, he's done it with law firms, he's done it with pharmaceuticals. So I think the conversation shouldn't be that yes, he has a mandate by the people who voted, but more people didn't vote for him. So we can also say that, as we say in Nigeria. And to Shehu Sani, I missed a bit of his session. But I think two things that I would speak about is, one, this issue of compulsory voting. Some conversation around it being violating people's rights. As you rightly said, there are several other countries that enforce it. But I'm very much against it for three reasons, I would say. Number one, in Nigeria, because there's nothing in our context that teaches really what a democracy is, that teaches citizens that the main difference between a democracy and a military dictatorship or military rule or a monarchy is that citizens have voice. They have the opportunity to participate in governance structures, express their concerns, express their dislikes, go to the polls as the case may be. And we need to work our way through that 60 plus years post-independence. And it's still not something that a lot of Nigerians understand. So for a lot of Nigerians, democracy equals elections. So we do it every 4 years. People come out to vote, and then we sleep, for the most part. So now making it compulsory for people to vote reinforces that notion that that's really what a democracy is. And we need to dispel that thought 100%. And secondly, people will come to vote if they believe their votes will count. And I dare say the National Assembly should work on electoral reform that allows that to happen and make that their focus, rather than penalizing or jailing Nigerians for the shenanigans that we see and people say go to court. If people actually believe their votes will count, they will come out to vote, not because you want to jail them for 6 months. And then the last point will be on this leaning towards a one-party state and the concerns therein. I saw a clip, I think it was on Arise, around someone saying we should blame Labour and PDP. Maybe we can look at that in a sense. But I mean, as we've always said, APC and PDP are two sides of the same coin, so I'm not quite sure why we're blaming them. But what we do have now that's a challenge is when a sitting governor says that if the commissioners don't defect with him, that they will be fired. Now I think for me, that's the very framing of where we are that's actually scary in how we're paying party politics at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Okpeyemi Adamolekun. Prof? Maybe you want to start with Côte d'Ivoire.
Yes, I want to start with Côte d'Ivoire because developments are very concerning. And the experiences we've had in Burkina Faso, in Mali,
Yes.
in Niger, all of these things make what is happening there more concerning.
Yeah.
And it also speaks to who we are as a people. Recall how so many people came out to support Alassane Ouattara when Laurent Gbagbo didn't want to allow him, assume office. Ouattara comes in, does a term, does a second term, changes constitution, gets a third term, and now wants a fourth. Developments in Côte d'Ivoire, they are really shocking because even Laurent Gbagbo himself was seen as, a leftist, a teacher who was supposed to represent the people, reflect the people's will, and he came in and became practically a dictator. So Côte d'Ivoire has gone through this circle of dictatorship. And one thing they have also tried to master very well is when they see somebody who is popular, they look for ways of disqualifying the person. It's part of what is generating tension in Côte d'Ivoire at the moment. Well, my advice to Alassane Ouattara is that he should quietly leave. He should forget about the third term agenda was bad enough. A fourth term is indescribably bad. We hope that the people will be able to prevail on him. We also hope that ECOWAS that will come in later, if something go wrong, and say, for instance, if the coup they rumored during the week had been successful, ECOWAS, of course, will certainly have come to say, oh, it's unacceptable, people must be elected to office and all that. And people have been talking about the coup before the coup. I mean, Ouattara had a coup in the third term that he got. Now he's looking for another coup to get a fourth term. I think ECOWAS needs to speak up, the AU needs to speak up, so that since he has graciously they've allowed him this third term, let him just go quietly, allow the democratic space to function so that stability can, take place in Côte d'Ivoire. What he's doing now is not right. He's not putting the interests of his country first. He's doing things that will plunge Côte d'Ivoire into a crisis and set the country back. I mean, there was a war before 2010 when he came in December 2010. Does he want another war again in Côte d'Ivoire before handing over to the next person? Or being captured like his predecessor was captured? That one was captured and it was a Nimetwepa. People were wondering, your action has caused the death of many people. You are saying, don't kill me. I mean, people just have very short memory. I'm prevailing on ECOWAS, I'm appealing to AU, everybody that has influence on, Côte d'Ivoire and the politics in the country should please appeal to this man to go quietly so that stability can be restored to that country. Then Trump. Well, when we analyze the history of France and we discuss the history of France and the United States, we say the France assisted the United States in their quest for independence, in their quest for liberty, freedom. And then, on the other hand, the US also influenced France in their own revolution. The core of the issue that led to all of the developments at that time was royal absolutism, where Louis XIV said before his death in 1715, Je suis l'État, l'État c'est moi. It is tragic that in 2025, US is headed in the direction of Je suis l'État, l'État c'est moi. That is just a simple way to describe this. A school, within the university is universal. You have all shades of opinions, all shades of ideologies. You allow them to prevail and to compete and superior argument to prevail. That is how university is. Trump's anger is that there are people who support the Palestinians, who support the Arabs. But, it should be side by side. There you also have people who support Israel.
He just got a plane from the Arabs. Can we discuss that?
Well, we discussed that. So it is really, really surprising that what is happening is happening. But the small silver lining in the cloud is that a judge has blocked it. So let's see how let's see how the democratic structure in the US, how it functions and how things play out, and how this whole thing ends. But it is really surprising that in 2025 the US can have this kind of structure where one man wakes up on the wrong side and does whatever he likes and without catastrophic consequences when he does wrong. Then for Ramaphosa, I think he wasn't strong enough. I think the praise that the argument that he was trying to no. You are a president of South Africa, he's president of the United States. They cannot, even Ukraine, where the president came and, they get everything from the United States to fight a war. The man was still able to hold his own.
Zelensky was driven away.
Well, but he held his own.
He was not given lunch.
He held his own.
Ramaphosa enjoyed lunch.
No. Look.
That's part of the African problem.
He held his own. He held his own. Ramaphosa was not strong enough, honestly. And you need, a whole lot of that to make Trump know the limits. When people continue to concede like this, you have a subordinate, superordinate, of presidents of two countries. Of course, it will embolden Trump to continue in that direction. It wasn't strong. He was diplomatic. He was gracious. He was statesman-like, but he needed to be stronger. I'm disappointed that he was not as strong as he ought to have been. Okay, fast forward to scorecard. 2 years of President Tinubu, 2 years to go in the first term. 2 years to go in the first term. I think a sectoral approach actually is better. The economy, foreign affairs, corruption, culture, and all that. Well, my summary of all the whole thing is that it is still hope. Hope. Hope deferred. Not even just hope, but hope deferred. They say
renewed.
They say renewed hope.
Hope
But I think it's hope deferred. Just look at, somebody was saying today that I went to the office briefly before I came in. I saw younger colleagues discussing. And they said, Oga, when you were employed, after about a year and a half, you're able to buy a car. When shall we be able to buy our own car? I said, maybe in 30 years from now. Because the Corolla that used to be 1.2, 1.3 is now about 8 million. Where would they find the money? And the salary of we earn that time is it about what they earn today? Where would they get the money?
In my time, the first Tokumbo grade A engine that I bought as a university teacher, which was 100,000 naira. In this same country. And when you kick the car in the morning, you go and check the, what do they call it? Is it silencer?
Yeah, silencer.
It will be bringing out water. And you will be happy. 100,000 naira cow. 100,000 naira.
I'm even talking about in recent memory, 2021, 2022. We still had this car for 1-point-something million. It's about 8 million now. Now, I also observed something on our car park. The cars are disappearing. Fewer and fewer cars. Some who have, they can't maintain them anymore. Some have sold theirs. Hardly anybody is buying any replacing the one that has been sold. So when we say poverty has intensified, it's not only at the level of the poorest of the poor. Even the so-called middle class is also now poor. Practically now poor. So when you have this kind of scenario, I'm just talking about people earn 300,000, 400,000, 500,000. What about those 70,000? So it is renewed hope, we call it. I will call it hope deferred. Promises are made, we are expectant, we try to be as optimistic as we can, but the reality on ground. There is a soap I used to buy at 360. I went to the market just 2 days ago. 1,400.
Black soap is better. And it's very good for your skin.
All of us
do
not recommend Bobati.
Advertising, I hope they are paying you for that advertising.
No, so you get the point we're making. In all ramifications, things have gone in the toboggan.
Which is why I asked you when you said 2 years. We're in election season already. So is that 2 years really do anything?
So that is the thing. And I'm saying this so that the government, we should not have the illusion that all is well, as some are saying, that, everything is fine, we are on the right course. We are still hopeful, but it's hope deferred for now. And we hope government will make that hope to be really renewed hope and reality.
Well, the president has promised that he will take all of us to the promised land within the next 2 years. So please, it's good to be hopeful because we are on our way to the promised land. Mr. Ologun.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So let me start on the journey to the promised land. And I think we need to quickly rise to reinvent the economy. When the DG was addressing the issue of the 27.50% interest put in place by CBN, it's of serious concern because it does not engender access to finance to industrialize the nation. I checked Switzerland. The interest rate in Switzerland is about 1.75%, single digit. You can imagine the impact that we have on the economy, and little surprise that nation is on the scale of prosperity. So we need to look at beyond the theory and, the committee decisions and things. What is the impact in the society? Many businesses have exited the country because of the difficult business environment. And if we claim to be taming inflation and taming the foreign exchange dislodgement, then we need to also realize that sustainability demands that the economy be put on the right path. And I hope that the issue of engagement that was prompted will be given attention. The stakeholders must be carried along to find out how they are affected, what they are suggesting, to ensure that at the end of the day, the decisions coming out from this environment are to help the businesses grow. And that brings us to the issue of the bill in the National Assembly. to compel citizens to vote. How I wish that those proposing that bill, making reference to the fact that it's compulsory for you to vote in Australia and some countries of the world, Argentina, and even in Egypt, also realize that in some of those countries, there's 100% access to energy, that life is meaningful for majority of the citizens. And why not concentrate on why people are expressing apathy? The global standard is that elections should be free, fair, and credible. To what extent does an average Nigerian election respect these expectations of the law? And again, there's what we call transfer process of Frank Jeffkins in public relations. When you talk about apathy, what you need to do is transfer it to interest. So what we interest the citizens to want to come out and vote. You need to look at all this. When will you begin to deliver good governance to the citizens? And like many have commented, I doubt if that bill will see the light of the day and become law, because that's what the list of considerations in this country now. Citizens are concerned with other various issues, talking about cost of living and all. And on the scorecard, in the last 2 years of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the difficulty is still around, but being specific, I will commend Honorable Dave Umahi for his great strides in the works sector of our lives, and the infrastructural development, the Badagry-Sokoto Road, Calabar, Lagos, and even in some parts of the northern country, connecting the nation together. And I understand, because I raised an advocacy for that the Ibadan-Ile-Ife, Akure Road also will gain attention. So if this is sustained, then it will help our economy. Then again, by extension, I must commend the response of the president to what subsidy removal cost us by saying, give crude to Dangote in exchange for Naira. And so that is helping to scale down the price. But then there are complaints about energy, particularly with this Band A, which has been judged as exploiting the citizens. So you look at this, then the Minister of Interior, Bumi Oni, is doing very well. The creative engagement of redefining your experience at the airport, how you apply for your passport and things like that. So, and for, again, the food sector needs attention, particularly with the state of insecurity. And Senator Uba spoke brilliantly on the need for the government to rise up to the occasion of insecurity in the northern part of the country. And I have maintained my advice.
Senator Shehu Sani.
Yes, Shehu Sani, thank you. I've advised people in the north that there's an adage that if the wall does not open its mouth, the lizard may find it difficult to come in. So the solution may be within them. Who are the sponsors of this banditry? How did they start? And I pray God will help them to resolve it. Governor Zulum is complaining bitterly in Maiduguri, but to allow me tell Governor Zulum that Muhammad Yusuf, that started Boko Haram, started right there in Borno State. So if we can handle security and some of these issues, but basically people are still going through difficult times. And let me go to the USA with Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is enjoying himself. He has not changed. Right from the show business day to White House, he's still Donald Trump. So he will throw anything at you. It's now up to you to throw back. And Ramaphosa did well with the Ramaphosa effect of emotional intelligence and trying to focus on the need to prove all these things and these tons of genocide that Trump was throwing on the table. And I wondered if Trump also did not feel he should mention what apartheid did to South Africa. But for Donald Trump, it's America first. And like we said earlier in the studio here...
Well, you wanted Trump to talk about apartheid?
Now, I'm just wondering that if he's concerned about white genocide in South Africa, what about the economic...
You can't be concerned about black people.
It's Ramaphosa that you have
Exactly. It cannot be Trump.
That's what I'm saying. Trump is only pushing his own American and white interests. It's now for Africa to wake up to the occasion. and begin to project into the future that when do we come to the table with these people and we are not on the table? And I think that's a big question for Africa. So when do, like China, we engage Donald Trump, like the Asian tigers, we engage Donald Trump. And I've said it, out of the 100% resources in the world, God has deposited about 40% in Africa. So Africa needs to wake up. But then Ramaphosa is also focusing on the business deals that may come out, because Trump is planning to yank off the AGOA if it's not already yanked off, and he's stopping some aid to Africa, which also should help Africa to wake up and be up and doing. And for Côte d'Ivoire, the African thing, and sometimes these leaders forget how they got into office, and they just want to perpetuate themselves in office. The case of Cameroon is still there. And when we talk about people rising up to the occasion, you know how some of them operate. They operate in a way that rising up to the occasion may be difficult for the citizens. And in wrapping up, back to Nigeria this time around now, talking about all the defections and whether President Tinubu is endorsing one-party state in Nigeria. There are 18 registered parties in this country, and if opposition is caving in, too bad. It only shows the quality of politicians that we have. And I think for some of them, the interest in their political career is more important than national interest, even though they come out to say they are defecting in national interest. And let me also say one thing. If some of them sit down, study the law on defection, that, okay, if there is crisis in the party from national level, you can defect. So even though they are accusing APC for causing crisis in their parties, they are also the tools used to create those crises. So,
okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ologun. Let's take another topic, and this is about ASU. The Academic Staff Union of Universities has called on the federal government to fulfill its bargain of the 2009 agreement reached with the university teachers' body, or face a nationwide industrial action. According to President of the Union, Professor Chris Piwuna, who spoke in Abuja this past week, the union was frustrated by government's failure to resolve 9 critical issues that have long plagued Nigeria's public universities. ASU's newly elected president highlighted the stalled renegotiation of the agreement since 2017 as part of the unresolved issues. He mentioned the withholding of salaries arising from a strike in 2022 and unpaid entitlements linked to the controversial integrated payroll and personnel information system. Well, he said a lot of other things about academic integrity, autonomy, payment of arrears and allowances. But I thought President Tinubu has been very nice to the university system, even paying arrears during the period that university teachers went on strike and all of that. I know you are smiling, Professor Aworawo. But let me start quickly with Mr. Ologun, and then we'll come to you, and then this is our university born.
University picking.
University, yes, Mr.
Thank you,
Ologun.
Doctor. You see, in year 2022, I was visibly involved in analyzing the crisis then when ASU went on strike, and Chris Ngige rushed to the National Industrial Court to interpret the Trade Disputes Act that says no work, no pay. And right now, the points I made then are still around with us. When are we going to attend to the fundamental issues that will help us to deal with the symptoms? And that is where we are now in year 2025. And ASU is claiming that those issues must be dealt with, like the revitalization of the academic system, and the payment system, and things like that. And I hope that for the purpose of having equity and justice in that environment, the government should arise to the occasion. Though I recall that when Chief Olusegun Obasanjo was the president, he commented that that deal that was struck, those promises were unrealistic. Mm-hmm. And I think that is why there may be a need to sit down again and come to what we call collective bargaining with the intention to implement whatever resolutions come out of it. Otherwise, this HR issue will continue to throw tantrums. And the academic sector will be the one suffering for it because, like he was saying, education is pivotal to national development, and I quite agree with that, and it should be given the maximum and premium attention it requires.
Well, Professor Aworawo, now you know Professor Chris Piwuna is new in the office. He has just taken over from Professor Emmanuel Oshodeke. Is this a case of Professor Piwuna also trying to announce his arrival to let the federal government know that, the new sheriff is in town? Because the issues are basically the same, aren't they?
Yes, actually, Professor Oshodeke went surprisingly quiet in the last year or so of his tenure. They said he had some meetings with government. We don't really know what transpired, but ASU members are angry that, all of a sudden, the ASU executive just went quiet, and that if we had where we are now, if Oshodeke had picked up like this, maybe 6 months, 9 months, 1 year ago, it would have been a lot further. But to be fair to the government, two things. Those salaries we said under Buhari, half of it was paid. 4 months are still being held.
How many months?
4 months. 4 months have not been paid. About 4 months, just about 4 months have not been paid. That's one. Then second, they actually began renegotiating. They know some part of that agreement unrealistic, some part of the agreement too anachronistic now. The events have overtaken some of the developments. So they started negotiating. Yaya Ahmed, former head of service, who is now pro-chancellor of one university, is leading the government team. And then the ASU side. They've actually reached an agreement on many issues. I will understand, including salaries and some other things. But there are a whole lot of other issues to negotiate. So, but even the ones that have been negotiated and agreed upon, the government said December passed. We are now in May, going to June. So that is what is causing anger. Assuming government, kept to its promise to begin to implement the aspects already negotiated and agreed to, then there will be faith that, okay, what is left will be negotiated and, In fact, many ASU members think that the ASU has been too gracious to the government. 2 years have passed, no strike, and not much has actually happened to justify no strike. So the new ASU president, he's not speaking to announce his arrival. He's only speaking to represent and reflect the general feeling among ASU members that, look, what government has agreed to, implementation should begin. 6 months and more have passed. And then what is left? There should be seriousness and, sincerity of purpose in negotiating them. If the government follows that path, it will achieve its objective of, not having strike during this administration. But if it does otherwise, of course, the usual thing will take place. There will be strike and strike and strike, which will be disruptive, which will not be good for government, good for ASU members, and of course, good for the system.
Okay, Yemi.
Sincerity of purpose, the usual, I like your choice of words. If there was sincerity of purpose, and then you said, if government doesn't comply, there will be the usual thing. And I keep saying this thing. ASU has been going on strike since 19 and it's still the same issues. And we're using the same tactic to try to solve a problem, and nothing has shifted. So we have a 20-point list. They will agree to 2, maybe implement 1 or half, and then we'll go on, as you rightly said, go along our merry way and then come back again. My position still remains the same. ASU should have a single issue campaign. Autonomous. Chikena. Look, a government that cannot stomach dissent cannot be interested in the welfare of higher institutions. Basic. Until ASU understands that as a given, all this dancing that we are dancing, we will continue to dance. And we see it even in the Trump example we just gave. And you said this when we were talking about Trump and schools like Harvard. Trump has personal beef. For example, he has personal beef with lawyers, is why he's taking certain law firms up, because they've challenged him. He had a personal beef with Colombia because there was a business deal that went bad. He's using his now presidential powers. He has a personal beef, I think, against the former or current president of Harvard as well. So a president is using his own personal beef to attack institutions of learning. In Nigeria, it's a personal beef of a different type. We just don't want people talking. We're not interested in tertiary education. We have a president whose university degree was subject to questioning. We have a country where learning and scholarship and innovation is not celebrated. So I think, and again, just as in closing, ASU really needs to, if ASU is serious, really, your singular issue, just give us autonomy. Let us run these university systems and create our own structures, create our own, because as long as ASU depends on the federal government's feeding bottle, you will not move forward and you will not be competitive in the 21st, 22nd, or 23rd century. It's not a curse, it's a statement of facts.
Well, Prof, the autonomy that she's pushing for, I hope it will include financial autonomy so that these universities will generate their own funds and not expect the federal government to provide any kind of grant.
But no. Then pause. So let me caveat that. It doesn't stop the federal government from providing grants. You can provide, for example, scholarships for indigent children. You can provide research scholarships. You can provide infrastructure scholarships. But the universities, our universities are all not the same. Ife, Ibadan, it's not the same level as Jigawa State University. It's just not. And so we can't be doing salaries in Jigawa and can't. Look,
a graduate of Jigawa State University will become Supreme Court
it's okay. That's why the country
before the
and that's why we're
autonomy will not stop us from still demanding. As you have seen, even in the case of the United States, even private universities are heavily funded by the US. You have to fund research.
Exactly.
And all that, not just scholarship.
But it's just that
but the autonomy, I agree with you.
Yeah, the point is, what terms is federal government responsible for our institutions of learning?
It's a matter of prioritization. What is the interest of the government in education? And I think that's a big question.
Anyway, thank you very much, Yemi Adamolekun. I will have been surprised if you didn't support the university system and Prof as well. Thank you. And Mr. Jide Ologun, thank you very much.
Thank God.
You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.